Action.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time today. We're going to be looking for the clicker. Marjana, do you know where the clicker is?
We don't have a clicker, sorry.
I have to make an announcement. There is no clicker.
And please speak louder because there's also no microphone.
Oh man, it's a tough day.
Tough, yes. Tough setup.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the job search. Everything from resumes through to trying to receive offers. And my name is Steve Davis. I have my own recruiting agency and I'm also a career coach. As a recruiter, my job is to find people that I can fill jobs with. And as a career coach, I try to work with people to help them receive offers and spend the least amount of time looking for jobs and get the most value from the time they do spend. So I just gave you my elevator pitch. So today, we're going to talk about the job search plan, which is really a survival plan, because without a plan, it's very difficult to stay focused, as you all know, I'm sure. And then we're going to talk about the resume, the purpose of a resume, and also interviewing. Interviewing is a state of mind, and there's an art to interviewing. And as part of interviewing, the elevator pitch. And then finally, we're going to talk about how to get offers and salary negotiation. I saw this somewhere online. I'm sure many of you might have seen it as well, but very few quotations hit me. This one really did. Having a goal without a plan is just a wish. And personally and professionally, I try to live my life on the planning side. So before anyone applies to a job or gets your name out in the job search recruiting world, it's important to understand who you are. That's called emotional intelligence, behavior, and some people call it executive presence. As a coach, I'm also a consultant as a coach for JP Morgan. And I coach their technologists globally from Asia Pacific through Europe, South America, and North America. The most important coaching component that I work on is executive presence, because most people that write code and are technologists, many of them have the personality of a rubber band. They don't really understand what it's like to communicate because they sit in front of the screen all day and write code. So when you translate that to interacting, and I'm not talking about chatting or texting or emailing, but face-to-face interacting with someone who can either promote you or hire you, think about the impression that you're giving and understanding your qualifications as they directly relate to your goals. So it's cold, but it's a fact. We are all products. We're all commodities. People are hired based on their value they can bring to their employer. But that's the real world. And in the interviewing process, everyone has different styles on evaluating job seekers. Some people interview very strictly, very cold. Some people are very relaxed and laid back. And as a recruiter, I myself have anywhere from 2 to sometimes 10 interviews a week. And some of my clients who give me jobs to fill, some of them permit me to sit in when they interview my candidates. And it's shocking to me to see how people's personalities can change on a dime. Someone that's very calm and casual with me, when the door closes in a conference room and the interview begins. So tell me about yourself. So why did you leave your last job? How much were you looking for? All these direct, confrontational, virtually confrontational questions. They're done on purpose. And just the opposite. Some people are, oh, hi, can you have a seat? Can I offer you some coffee? Would you like some water? How about some cappuccino? They do that on purpose. And I've witnessed people loosening up on the interviewing side and they say things they regret. So please think about it. Knowing who you are is half the battle. Make sure, by the way, you're not your resume. When someone asks you to tell them about yourself, that's the first question I ask when I'm interviewing. If I find a resume online or if I see a profile on LinkedIn, I'll schedule a phone screen, and the first question I ask is, so tell me, what are you looking for? Tell me about you. And most people just read every job they've ever had. Their job title, their tasks, their responsibilities, and after I wake up, I ask them to please tell me how they are so successful and why they're a strong candidate. And it's important to know what your profile is. Social media is a killer, folks. Almost every employer I know does a background check. Know your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and please be sure to Google yourself and do a check on your online presence and see what's out there, because your potential employer is going to do that. Knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, and when you're giving your elevator pitch, it's really important to communicate as concisely as you possibly can, but accentuate why you are so good at what you do, as opposed to just giving a bio of your work history. So this is crazy, but looking for a job is not about you. It's about your ability to communicate to the recruiters and the hiring managers why you fit the job requirements. So this is pretty funny. There was also a cartoon, I don't know if you saw it, it's an IKEA interview. And the hiring manager at IKEA was interviewing a candidate sitting in front of the manager's desk, and there was no chair, it was all pieces on the floor. It's not about you, folks. This is a fact from our government, U.S. Department of Labor. How many of you apply to jobs online? Wow, not so much. How many of you don't apply to jobs online? Impressive. Most jobs are not posted. That's a fact. And just because you see a job on Indeed or any other job board, as we call them, it doesn't mean the job is open. The manager could have already scheduled 10 interviews. They're not seeing anyone else. The job is still posted. There could be an offer extended. Someone could be thinking about it. The job is still posted. It could be on hold. Maybe the budget was pulled. It's still posted. So please don't believe everything you read or hear, especially on the news. Yes, sir?
They have posting dates. Doesn't that have an impact on whether or not it's still up?
No.
No?
No.
They leave it up there for a long time, even when the job is filled.
Thank you. The young lady just said they leave it up for a long time, even when the job is filled.
Yeah, because I applied for one at Memorial Sloan Kettering.
Yes,
My sister works in pediatrics,
yes.
and she said, Tony, you and I can't work on the same floor. So they have to give it to another person, but I could help you get in on another floor. It's 60 days now. She's training that person that came. The job is still on Indeed. 60 days, they didn't take it down, and somebody got the job already.
Thank you
I
for
saw it
sharing
there
that.
yesterday.
Thank you for sharing that. It's true. Most of my jobs that I'm trying to fill, I'm trying to right now over 100 positions. I can't fill them. They're all technology development jobs. When I fill one, I don't pull it, because I know I'm always going to be looking for people. The more you know about the hiring side, the less time you will spend spinning your wheels. I don't want you to spin your wheels. Oh, so according to the Department of Labor, 2 out of 100 people get any response when they apply online. And there are 2 obstacles between someone looking for a job and a hiring manager. One is an applicant tracking system, which scans resumes and looks for keywords. Does anyone not know what an ATS is, an applicant tracking system? It's an algorithm because, and this is also important, ladies and gentlemen, recruiters in HR are under enormous amounts of pressure and stress because they have end-of-year evaluations, and if their performance doesn't live up to what it's supposed to be, they're going to receive a warning. They're going to receive a second warning. If they don't shape up, they're fired. And the feedback comes directly from the managers who send them their job requirements. So if you send a resume to a recruiter and you don't get a response, don't be upset, because the recruiter may be working on 40 or 50 different jobs JP Morgan recruiters work on 30 to 40 different jobs Monday through Friday. Everything from bankers to tellers to technologists, customer service, loan managers, private wealth managers, investment managers. They don't have time to read resumes. That's why applicant tracking systems exist. They scan your resume. Now, if you want to save some time, there is a website that will enable you to download your resume, download a job description, click on a button, and it will scan your resume, and it will show you what words you're missing, what words you're covering. You receive an additional 5. So it's conceivable you may not have to pay anything. It'll also scan your LinkedIn profile. Maybe you can buy a lottery ticket through it, I don't know, but it's a time saver. Now, U.S. Department of Labor, this is a touchy subject. Yes, sir?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
That's okay, I get interrupted all the
Do
time.
you highly recommend that someone should have a LinkedIn profile?
Without question. In the recruiting, hiring world, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you do not exist. In fact, it's important to have a link to it on your resume. Do you have one?
Not a link to it on my resume.
Okay, please create one. And get a photograph. Make sure you're not holding a margarita or wearing sunglasses.
They're doing free photographs here.
I'm sorry?
They're doing free photographs here.
They're gonna have free photographs here next week for LinkedIn, which
Started
is,
6 o'clock.
wow, thank you for sharing that. This library is incredible.
Amazing.
Really is. So 7 out of 10 people that receive offers get them by networking. What do you think networking means?
Keeping in contact with people in the industry.
Say again, sorry?
Keeping in contact with people in the industry, probably previous co-workers or people
No.
who you know that? No?
No, that's part of it.
Okay.
And what were you saying?
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
I used to believe that. Now I think
Does
it's,
that change?
well, it does, in my mind it has. It's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, great minds. So there's an art to networking, and it's not a matter of calling people that you don't know saying, please help me get an interview. People connect with me on LinkedIn every day and they ask me to send their resumes to JP Morgan. Why would I do that? I don't even know them. Yes?
I was gonna say, actually, another class here, discovered yesterday, LinkedIn has a new feature. There's a catch to it, where if you're in an area and you go onto the search, it'll say nearby, show me nearby, and it'll show everyone's LinkedIn profile that's near you. But the only catch is they actually have to be on that page.
Have to be on what page?
On the search thing, where it says search.
Yes.
There's something that says underneath that says nearby now.
Oh,
So you have
okay.
to click on that, and if you click on it, because I was in the class, and then everyone clicked on it, and it actually pulled up the profiles of everyone, so.
Thanks for sharing that. We should all check that out. I didn't even know that. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't either, so.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about networking and how to effectively network. And there's 2 ways to look for a job, and networking is integrated in this process. You can be reactive. Now when you're reacting, you see a job posted and you want to send your resume, you're reacting to it. And you can be proactive. But again, as we discussed, you don't know the status of a job posting. Proactive, it's important to do both in my experience, but proactive searching is much more effective because when you're reacting to a posting or a recruiter, and people always ask me, how can I contact recruiters? They are not interested in talking to people about looking for jobs. They make their livelihood based on filling positions from the hiring side. Their loyalty is from the companies that give them their jobs to fill, not to the people that are looking. Please think about what happens on the other side. So to be proactive gives you control. You don't have to deal with the recruiters who don't want to talk to you unless you have the skills they're looking for. One of the easiest and most effective ways to create a new network is to find something in common with people. LinkedIn has an alumni search program where you can search for people that attended the same school or speak the same language, or grew up in the same state or country as you did. Reaching out to a complete stranger is difficult. However, if you call attention to the fact that you have something in common, and you don't want to sell them anything, and you're not asking them to send your resume to the global head of HR, you have a good chance of them accepting your invitation, as long as a few things are in place. As long as they're not stressing out on their job, they don't have management issues, and as long as their home life is relatively stable. It's a normal day, BAU, business as usual, and they receive an invitation on LinkedIn saying, John, I saw you went to the same school, or you grew up in California, I grew up in something. You have an impressive profile, it would be a pleasure to connect with you. If you do that 10 times, you'll be accepted once or twice. If you do it 20 times, you'll be accepted 2 or 3 or maybe 4 times. You just need one. So let's say someone accepts your connection. Yes, there's a hand, yes.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you just mentioned that, because the last time I actually met you a few months ago at one of these job thingies. I walked up to you and I shared my woes, and you gave me some pretty good advice, including
Thank you, yes.
make sure that you continue to network and so on and so forth. So what actually happened to me was exactly as you said, and it's not something, my background is actually human resources and recruiting. But from California, not here. But I do want to share with the group what actually happened, because I did exactly that. And if you've never done it before, reach out to someone that you don't know. It can seem like, it's not going to work and so on and so forth. But in my instance, it worked. And it was a totally blind reach out, because I wasn't even on LinkedIn. But I took a chance, and I encourage others, even though I didn't get the job, I encourage others to take that chance, because it actually did land me an interview. So what basically happened was I saw a job advertised. It was a step down from my level, but I was very excited about the organization. So I looked and I said, I wonder who this position reports to, and it actually said reports to the HR director, which is usually my position. I said, okay, let me find out who that is. I was able to get that person's name, but I couldn't get the email. However, that person also had their own business, just like you have your consulting.
Right.
And under that, I found the person's email.
Smart.
So what I did was I applied for the job through the regular ATS, through the regular online,
Right.
but I wish I could read you the letter, but I dared to write a cover letter to this lady by name, saying the following: Dear such and such, I recently applied to a job for blah, blah, blah. I'd like to introduce myself. I see that you and I are both volunteers at New York Cares. That was really, so that, is what I mentioned. It was just a 2-paragraph cover letter
Yes.
mentioning that both of us are New York Cares volunteers. Would you believe that about 5-6 days later, I got an email from her address at the organization, copying her recruiter, saying, great to hear from you, why don't we schedule an in-person? I mean, it actually happened. Now, that was the first time in recent times that I've actually done it, but it worked. It got me an interview. I didn't get the job, ultimately, but it got me,
That's phenomenal.
so you're not
Really.
just saying it and
Really.
it doesn't work. And like I said, I was a bit hesitant because, I'm like, but it actually worked.
I can't thank you enough for sharing that.
Yeah.
Wow. And you were a bit hesitant?
I was hesitant. I'm a recruiter. I know how many emails. When I worked in California, and I worked in the film industry, you won't believe who was trying to reach me.
Of course.
Sending me candy, flowers, all everything, pictures. Yeah, so I was a bit, I wonder how this is going to work out. But because she owned her own company
Right.
that actually was in the business of that same industry, I said,
Right.
let me just try it.
That is so smart for you to do that. And think about the risk. What's the risk in doing something like that? The worst that could happen is you don't get a response. You think they're going to remember who you are in a week or a month? Yes.
So another event where it's like $1,000 event, she was like, I know this person. So they were actually pretty good about saying, okay, come to this event. And the good thing about at least like some of those specific events, like what I didn't know at the time was the event, they actually not only give you the contact information of the attendees, they actually had job postings, and similar to what you said, I've been checking the job postings, it's not on their website.
Right.
Mhm.
They sent it to, like,
Right.
for the specific, but they were actually really good about the project.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because, you know, when you're thinking about whether you reach out or you don't, whether you try to find the email or just give up and do something else, think about the risk and the reward and what you have to gain and what you potentially will sacrifice. The sacrifice is minimal, and finding the commonality, as you both said, it's huge.
Well, I mean, the other thing that helps to add is that I've been posting on LinkedIn that's going to these events.
Right.
And then my college actually reached out to me, like literally I was sitting here, and they said, we see you've been going to these events, would you like to speak at a roundtable for us? So,
How good is that?
Yeah.
So-
but I think it's only for the Wednesday
You
events.
could post that also on LinkedIn.
Sorry?
You could also post that, you know, the picture that
Yes.
they're posting.
Yes.
Because employers are looking at that, oh, I have to go, you're out there, you know.
Recruiters are as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be a detective now.
No, exactly. I mean, we all live on LinkedIn. We all do, every minute of every day, 7 days a week. So, got one chance to make a first impression when someone contacts you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I just mentioned my story about the job, about the job.
Please do. Please do.
Okay, so I actually grew up here in New York, and I live down on 23rd Street in Second Avenue. And the job I'm gonna be getting in November is called American Eagle. It's like a clothing store, and I haven't been working for like a long time, since like the year I was born. And then once I started looking for that job, I started doing a work resume with this guy Max the job pad. And he said, and Max said to me, so Henry, you want to work at American Eagle? They'll give you a resume. And then I said, okay. So, and then I didn't get an email from them, but I'm hoping that once I get the email from American Eagle, I'll be able to work there, save enough money, and so I can afford that money to get them all in army. And I'm grateful for that.
Good for you. Good for you. Nice going. Nice going.
Good for you.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So we only have one chance to make a first impression. As a recruiter, and I'm sure you know, if we have a candidate, we request a phone interview, and if someone just doesn't kill it on the phone interview, they think it went well, but they're done, they're toast.
And you know, so when I went for this interview, within the first 8 minutes, she looked at me and she said, I'm going to be very honest with you, you're qualified. You should be sitting where I am.
And you knew that.
I knew it, but I thought, let me, because of the organization. But I just wanted to throw that out there. It's great
Thank
when
you.
they actually give the
The
real
feedback.
feedback.
That's right, which is rare, it really is. And there's a way to overcome the overqualified issue too, because people use it frequently, as you know. So the elevator pitch, you've got your ups and your downs, and my goal today is that you all leave feeling like that.
Oh, you're funny.
So let's talk about your resume. What's the purpose of a resume? Who thinks that it's to sell yourself? Show of hands, please. Okay. Is it supposed to give your entire employment background? Hands, please. Is that the purpose of a resume? Okay. All of those, okay. A snapshot of your career. See a lot of nods there. Purpose of a resume, is it to get a job? And you want to impress people. Here's my resume. It only has one purpose. That's it. You've got between 8 seconds and 12 seconds. If you pass the scan on the applicant tracking system to a human being in recruiting whose job it is to scan resumes, If you don't compel them to schedule an interview, by 60% of page 1, you're out. This is another great quote. It is not enough to tell people what you're responsible for, because you're competing against so many candidates for every single job. You want to talk about how you were able to make a difference, why you are the best candidate for the job. If you're an HR recruiter and someone's asking you why are you qualified, or tell me about yourself, if you describe what your job is, to go over resumes and go on LinkedIn and try to do the best work you possibly can, you're not going to get the offer. If you talk about your ability to connect with candidates and try to eliminate people as quickly as possible and qualify people as much as you possibly can, and only send the most qualified resumes to managers, and do thorough checks on social media and background before you even do anything, you're talking like you already have the job. Perception is reality. And those are the two obstacles between anyone looking and the hiring manager. And as someone that scans resumes, I don't even know how many, but when I go to sleep at night and I close my eyes, all I see are bullets.
Totally good.
So why are you the best when you're interviewing? Why you? Please think that way. Because as I said, unfortunately, we're all commodities. We are. Why? It's not because you graduated. It's not because you live in New York. Does anyone want to give their elevator pitch? Well, how about does anyone have a resume? Maybe I can give you your elevator pitch. No resumes? Good.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not.
Oh, come on, you didn't. All right, I'll give it a shot. Are you an auto mechanic?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Something you should be familiar with.
Whoa.
Yes.
Can I give you some feedback?
I'm open for it.
Okay. John's first word is passionate. That's not a job requirement. That's a talking point when you're on an interview.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, John, you've got references on here.
Yes.
As a recruiter, my reaction to that, this guy's desperate. If someone wants your references, they will ask you for them.
Okay.
So it looks like you're a copywriter with Deputy Director of Operations, motivational speaker, Bankers Trust. Wow, that was my first job out of school.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was a teller. I have your money, by the way. All right, before I give you your pitch, can I ask you what position are you looking for, job title wise? Because you've got a diversified background here.
General management.
Can you be more specific?
In financial services.
Operations management
Yes.
in financial services? Have you done it before?
Yes.
EBOF is finance?
Yes.
Okay. So hit me with a question, please. Tell me about yourself.
I'm a well-rounded manager. I have interpersonal relations with my employees. I coach them. I give them information on what's going on. I meet with them regularly, and I ensure that the company is getting the best they could from my division.
Okay. Please ask me to tell you about me. Make believe you're interviewing me.
Please tell me about yourself.
First of all, thanks very much for asking. I consider myself very, very lucky. I've been in operations management and successfully reduced costs by over 20%. I not only do my job in operations, but I help to improve my colleagues' performance by trying to mentor them and enable them to learn more as we get busier and busier. And I'm looking for an opportunity, just like the one we're talking about, where I can join a team, use all my operational success, and really make a difference. That's why I'm so glad we're talking today.
Yeah, that was good.
I can start Monday.
And you referenced that from here.
Yes, I did.
So,
Most decisions are made within 30 seconds from the time someone says, tell me about yourself. It's true. I can't tell you as a recruiter when I send someone in for an interview, usually they meet with 1, 2, 3, or 4 people, 30 minutes at a shot, and then they take them to lunch, and then I always say, please call me, because I'm a recruiter, I want to know how it went. 9 times out of 10, the phone calls go like this. I love that company. Everyone was great. They spent a lot of time. I think I'm going to get the offer. Why? Well, they kept me there for 4.5 hours. They brought me lunch. They showed me the office. It was great. Then I called the manager. So, what'd you think of Joanne? No good. Folks, I'm a volunteer here. The reason I do this is because I don't want you to waste your time and live under false pretenses when you're looking for a job.
Yeah.
Knowing the hiring side is equally as important as knowing who you are, if not more so. When you go for an interview, it's important to have a goal. The goal is to make an impression. Now, it sounds complicated, but it really isn't, because there's only 2 criteria, and I'm hoping you can back me up or argue with me. An interview consists of 2 parts. Is the person qualified? Does the person have the skills and the experience to do the job? And does the person have the cultural fit to get along in the team and the company culture? That's it. Now, when you see a job that's looking for 4 to 8 years of experience, and you have 15, apply. And conversely, if the job is looking for more experience and you have less, apply. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because as a recruiter, I earn my living by getting offers for my candidates. And if I'm working on a position and I narrow down the number of resumes from 100 to 50 to 25 to 10 to 3, I will send my top 3 candidates in because I'm competing against other recruiters who are sending their top candidates in. I want to get the hire. Now, if 2 out of 3 of my submittals, as we call them, have 90 to 95% of the requirements, and one person only has 70% or 75%, but they have the connection, they have the personality, they have the sense of humor, they're good listeners, and they have great comeback answers, I'll send that person in, and most times I'll have to convince the manager to see him or her. But if they do, that person usually gets the offer.
Oh, wow. Tremendous.
Shocking.
Tremendous.
Shocking. Because they connect.
yeah.
The manager knows if I hire him or her, we're going to work well. Yes.
I do want to add to what you said.
Okay.
I go to quite a few of these HR events, which are HR and recruiting events, which are continually debating all kinds of interesting things. And 2 very important topics this summer, throughout across the board: artificial intelligence and diversity and inclusion. As part of that, companies are now starting to move a little bit away from what we've been talking about, culture fit. They're now starting to talk about culture add. And so, in the realm of what you're saying, you'd like to hire someone who you can get along with.
Right.
So now, instead, and some companies are still using that, but a lot of them who are embracing the whole diversity and inclusion
Right.
movement are starting to say, well, this is how we do things around here, but how can you come in and add to what we already have? And so I just wanted to throw
That's a
that
valid
back
point.
and say it's moving a little, it's progressing from culture fit to culture add.
That's a valid point, and
From
what I'd
what
like
is
to
culture
add,
ag?
That is adding
Oh.
to how we do things here, as opposed to, this is not, we're not really a fit, because that, if we really looked at it, can be a big barrier.
it can be. Another part of the equation is understanding how much awareness the candidate has for himself or herself. Now, that's not a cultural fit, it's a personality fit. And that's part of the equation also, and so is everything you just mentioned. It's an add-on to the culture, it's also how self-aware is the person. Does that person live in a silo, or is that person open to what's going on around him or her? Aware. And there really is an art to interviewing. It is behavior, and it's just also, are you qualified to do the job? Now here's the nitty-gritty in my world of interviewing. There is a framework, if you can think about it. You're telling a story. When I just gave John's elevator pitch, I told a story. When I started out and I introduced myself to you, I gave my story. Every story has only 3 parts: a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you don't capture someone's attention in the beginning, you're done. So you want to have a strong opening, like, thank you. I'm really a lucky person. Something different that every other candidate won't say. Or I was looking forward to meeting you, I looked up your profile. And then the middle is where most people talk too much. You're laughing, but please, it's, I have war stories. When I interview candidates before I decide to send them in or not, oh, why did you move from California? Well, my mother-in-law moved to Florida, then my in-laws moved back to Georgia, then we all moved up to New Jersey, and by the way, my husband got a new job in New York, and then I had my first son. Beginning, middle, end. The beginning pulls them in, the middle keeps their attention and pulls them into wanting to learn more, and the ending is what they're going to remember you by. Why should they care? Do I care why you moved from California to New York? What kind of carry-on did you have? Action verbs are powerful. When you're writing resumes, please don't describe your tasks. And I'm sure you'll back me up on this. Before you click send on your resume or your cover letter, please read it from the hiring side and imagine your job is to decide whether or not this person gets an interview or not. You're competing against other people. So I don't believe you're gonna have a great chance of getting an interview if you talk about what you do, what your responsibilities are, and what your tasks are. Like John saved 20% in operational costs. That jumps off the page. That jumped off your resume to me. Save time, increase efficiencies, improve operations, lower costs, improve productivity. Action, action. Why are you so good? Not what do you do, why are you so good? If you increased profits, raised, expanded, you just do a synonym search. But this attracts attention in the 8 to 12 seconds that you have your life based on this resume. Yes?
However, if you have that fantastic resume and you're sitting in the interview and you can't at the drop of a hat speak to what you said, you go from here to there in a second. And it's happened. I've been on the other side interviewing people and I'm looking at the resume, it says I did this and this and this and this resulting in such.
Right,
Call that person to describe what happened, clueless.
me too.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. People can see right through it, and you're gonna be most likely asked about it. So when you're giving answers to your interviewing questions, remember you're responding to a job description. Most people think they're responding to questions. You're responding to a job description. And it's not effective to talk about what you do. What really jumps and gets in the mind of the hiring managers is giving examples. If you are a copywriter and you're competing against other copywriters, you can show your resume and say, hey, I'm a great copywriter, I wrote for this ad, this ad, this ad, great. But why are you so good? What did you produce? What were the results? And give an example, but just don't give it. Interviewing is questions and answers. And it's not like you're in the 19th precinct with a light shining over your head. Where were you on the night of the 21st? That's not what it is.
You're
So-
drenching sweat.
It's your ability to transform the questions and answers into a conversation. So when this young lady is interviewing you and asks you about your copywriting skills and, well, it looks like you have the skills we need for this job. Yes, I know I do. Would you like an example of some similar work that I've done? Ask. That shows your emotional intelligence. And it's an indication of how you would react and how you would behave reporting to a manager. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I did this, and it was, well, I didn't ask you. Ask permission. Would you like an example? Or we can continue with the interview. You're showing respect to the interviewer, but most times they're going to say, sure, I'd love to hear about it. And you're leading them down the road. You have the ability to lead the interview. It's not just them, right?
You know, I have to say that one thing that, and it's difficult, for me it's difficult because I'm so used to being on the other side. The amount of leeway and authority and control that the candidate or the interviewee gives to the interviewer is so important. Because it almost, if that person is not the hiring manager or the HR person, they still have an understanding. On the morning that your boss says to you, I want you to switch gears and do this and do this and do that, the way that I'm presenting myself in the interview is a huge indication of how I'm going to respond on a daily
Well said.
basis. And
Well said.
it has worked against me on some occasions because it's clear
Yes.
that I'm going to be, do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course.
So I think it's really something to look out for.
It
It's
is.
almost an acting role.
It is an acting role. And what's super frustrating is when I ask candidates to tell me about how their interviews went, I want to just dig a hole when they tell me I didn't have a chance to talk.
I blacked out.
The interviewer dominated the conversation. Has that ever happened? Yes, ma'am.
Because people are afraid to speak out and, and stuff like that, they don't know that they take that in with them into the interview. So what I have found has been very helpful is
Yes.
that I actually ask myself these questions, write out these questions, stand in front of the mirror, because people don't like to self-promote. And that's a big thing. And therefore, by hearing myself repeated and repeated, the memory, so that when the opportunity comes in the interview, I'm able to then give it back. And it sounds very natural. It's not the first time I'm hearing my voice say it.
Right.
Really,
No.
I got my biggest job. I got my biggest job in leader of an industry by doing that, of writing it out and hearing myself say it, so that I didn't shock myself when I heard myself in the
I'm so glad you said that, because people don't want to self-promote. And I'm so glad you brought that up. There's a fine line between bragging and being proud and being enthusiastic about why you're good. Thank you. Now there's 4 examples of some pretty good answers to the question, tell me about yourself. Number 3 is my favorite. My personal philosophy is, or number 4, people that know me say that I am always showing up late, going to lunch early, and leaving home.
Well, you sure got that job.
Oh, I'm positive. Most people don't talk that way on interviews. You want to be different. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I was at Citigroup one day on an interview for a data analyst, and I had screened this man thoroughly. And the hiring manager started out by asking him, why does he think he's a good fit for the job? And he said, because I need a job. I'm not kidding you. I'm not. You have no idea what we go through as recruiters. Yes, yes.
I guess
Yes.
you didn't get the job, Ryan?
You think? What makes you say that? Yes, sir.
Could you venture a percentage of people that have these skills walking into an interview? I mean, are we in the oracle here of very exclusive information, or is this now kind of common knowledge kind of things?
I think it's common knowledge.
So when people go in, we're up against people that are equally trained as we're getting.
I don't think there's an equal in any of this. There's no equality in here. It's knowledge. Knowledge is power. And audiences are different. You've got the job seeker, the hiring side, and you've got the job seeker side. Right?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Could you speak about following thing briefly, how the prospective, how interviewers review prospective job candidates in 2 cases. When the person is currently employed and looking for a job,
Right.
and the person, it's known that the person is not currently employed. What's the power dynamic?
The question is, what's the power that
In
someone...
other words, like,
What?
the interviewer will view the jobless person as like, like deadbeat or a loser, and the person who already has a job as like,
Okay.
enterprising,
Thanks for asking that question. That's a great question.
Like, what goes on in the minds of
A
the
lot goes
interviewer?
on in the minds. That's a great question. If you hadn't heard this, the gentleman was asking, and I'm sure you'll have an answer on this as well. Is there a different perception from the hiring side, interviewing someone who is currently employed versus someone who's not? Well, years ago, the saying was, it's always better to look for a job when you have a job.
Yes.
And the reason that was so popular is because most hiring managers were prejudiced. They felt like, if this person's out of work, why would they be the best choice? Think about it. Whomever makes a decision to extend an offer, if the person doesn't work out, that manager's manager is calling that person in and saying, why did you make that hire? So it's the best match for the job. Now, in today's world, and this is just my opinion, everyone has their own opinion, but in my experience as a recruiter who sits in my interviews and sees offers extended and witnesses people interviewing that should receive offers that don't, everyone is different. There's not a general answer. However, if someone's out of work, one of the initial questions is going to be why. Now, right now, salary has changed. It's against the law to ask anyone in New York or in California or in Massachusetts what their current salary is. It's against the law. So if you're out of work, if someone says, what were you earning in your last job, call your attorney. However, the offer goes to the person that has the right personality and experience and knowledge and instills confidence in the hiring manager that the job will be filled for a long time.
That is powerful, what you said.
Thank you. Now, a lot of companies like JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and many others have a return to work RTW program where they're actively hiring people who have been out of the workforce for 2 or more years. They want to hire them. So the entire hiring complexion has changed. compared to 10 years ago, you've been out of work for 2 years or 5 years, you raised a family, you haven't worked, your odds were significantly lower than they are today. So, sir, to answer your question, don't let the fact, if you know someone or if you're out of work, don't feel inferior. You still have the ability to qualify yourself as the best candidate for the position, as long as you present yourself and answer questions in the best way and give examples of why you're so good at doing the job you're interviewing for. That's the bottom line. Oh, and have a valid reason why you've been out of work for 2 years.
Isn't that kind of personal too, if you've been caretaking or if you've just decided to take some time off or, you know.
It's all
you've been-
personal. Everything is
But they're
personal.
not allowed to ask you your salary, so.
Correct.
Why have you been out of work for so many years?
What's wrong with that?
It's different than asking for salary.
Right,
Totally.
right.
They need to know why you're not working, but the salary part of it is totally different.
Right. It's not any, I mean, interviewing is personal.
Are we communication?
When you have that in your resume.
Yeah, most people have gaps in your resume. You have to be honest, although this is a killer. I was coaching an attorney here at Sybil in a one-on-one session, and he was asking me to help him with his resume. And I was asking him questions, and I was writing a new resume for him. And his answers didn't seem right. And I said, sir, are you sure this is accurate? And he said, no. He's an attorney. I said, sir, you can't lie. He said, no, you can't lie, but there are many ways to frame the truth. But then I started to think about it, and he's right. Yes.
These work program that you mentioned here, Morgan Stanley and those sort of things, before they even call you, because I've gone through them, before they even call you, they tell you that you have to be out of work for 2 years or more.
Right.
I've met people who've been out of work for 24 years, who got rehired, and they kind of qualify, you know, what you could be out of work for, to having children, so they don't disqualify you if you say you left to have children or you were sick or whatever.
Exactly.
It's already made known, and even before they call you and do the phone interview, they know the reason why you've been out of work.
Exactly.
So it's not an issue. That's
It
my
isn't.
practice.
And as a recruiter, like I'll interview people that are in their 20s and 30s that have a year gap. And I'll ask them outright, what were you doing? And they'll say, you know, I traveled. I went to Europe. I went to Asia because I know I never would have this time in my future career to take this much time off. And when I call the manager, and manager says, I don't want to see this person. He's been out, or she's been out for a year. Forget it. No, the person was traveling. He or she has made a commitment to go back in the workforce now. They got it out of their system. They're ready to go. You don't want to see it? Okay, I have other places to send them. It's okay. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just share a personal?
No. Oh,
experience?
yeah,
I have a significant gap on my resume because of living in my family.
Okay.
And punctuating the last couple years of part-time work.
Okay.
And the biggest thing is just to not be ashamed that you have that gap. And
Thank you. Own it.
write it out there
Own
on the
it.
resume and just, it is what it was.
That's right.
I'm just.
That's right. And if they don't want to hire you for that, it's their loss. You don't want to be there.
How about, how would they feel if somebody just didn't need to work? They didn't need the money. They're not coming to work for money. Are they more, if you're motivated by money, then they feel they have you better?
Everyone has a different opinion. In that situation, it's the person's ability to frame it in the positive light. If they didn't need the money, they took the time off to do some soul searching, and now they're ready to go back 100%, and they're going to land a job someplace, and they hope it's with you.
What was the name of the companies who have that Go Back program?
Morgan Stanley is one, JP Morgan is another.
You
If
can
you,
look up irelaunch.com.
That's- I was just gonna say that. Thank you. Yep.
What is also Google it.
you can write,
You can Google it.
there's a lot more.
Companies would read.
IB Launch?
I launch, IB launch, right?
I relaunch.
I relaunch, that's right.
I-R-E launch.
L-A-U-N-C-E.
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
a tile list.
Right. Yes,
Oh, I was just gonna add to like what you were saying, I was actually talking to someone who was recruiting and she admitted to me, she said, we expect people to be out of jobs, but we want to
Yeah, because interviewing is a matter of overcoming objections that are cleverly disguised in questions like, why did you leave your last job, and why have you been out of work, what have you been doing? And why did you change jobs so much? Innocent sounding questions, but they're designed to eliminate you. Yes?
Didn't the period of the Great Depression kind of shift that paradigm of being out of work?
You weren't around then. What did you What are you having for lunch these days? The Great Recession or recession?
Is that we going through
Okay.
right now?
Okay. That was 10 years ago? I feel like 50.
You know, so many people were out of work for so long.
Yeah.
It was common to run into people who had.
Of course.
large gaps in their,
So what's your question?
Did that shift the mindset of?
I think it has shifted. Did you ever hear of outplacement? Outplacement is when a company starts firing people, especially in 07 and 08, when the financial markets tanked. And that's when I started to do a lot more coaching for JP Morgan. And people would come into my office and tell me that their jobs were eliminated. And I say, okay, when you go on interviews, when people ask you, why did you leave JP Morgan, what do you say? And they, well, my job was eliminated. No, you don't say that, because there are many ways to frame the truth.
What do you say?
You could say autism.
Come on.
No, I'm serious.
No, you can, but it's not going to get you anywhere. The perception, okay, thank you. The perception on many people on the hiring side is, at least from my perspective in finance, if someone says I was downsized or my job was eliminated, most people in recruiting believe that you were eliminated because you were one of the low performers. Think about it. There are people still working at JP Morgan. The company didn't close down.
But at that time, I mean, departments were.
How do you say it exactly? Yes.
Departments were eliminated, not just one person, the entire department.
Right, so
Didn't
what you
matter
want to
if
say
you were
is the
golden
company
side or
went through a restructuring, and there were many, many changes, and many, many people were reorganized. I was part of a reorganization. It's all on how you say it. It's like reorganizing your closet. People were moved, then I got new people. Yes. You're up.
I would love to add to what's been said and also what this gentleman raised. I myself, as a recruiter, I'm very proud about the fact that 4.5 years ago, I had a property manager position come available. And one of the top contenders for this position was someone who'd been out of work for 10 years. This person excelled in the phone interview, the in-person interview, the higher-ups really liked this person, there was someone else. At the end of the day, we hired that person. Before
Out of work for 10 years?
Hadn't worked for 10 years. This was a property manager position. Now, she sold herself because, or she really came across as someone who could step back into that role because she had managed the property opposite ours
Right,
10 years ago.
right.
So in terms of volume, you know, we knew she could handle that. She was that was her profession. And even though there's been 10 years, she, at the point that we were going to make the offer, she didn't want it to influence us one way or the other. It's up to you if you decide to share something personal. She just happened to share with me that she'd gone through, she'd had cancer. And so there was this huge big thing. Now, a lot of people say don't divulge things like that to the employer, they don't want to hire you, they don't want to take on the risk. Yes, I would say that that is subjective because the decision actually lay with me. I got to make the final decision. And I made that recommendation because of what she said next, just to me. She said, if I can get back into work and spend the rest of my days doing what I love most, that would be fantastic. So I hired Linda back in 2013 and she died in 2015.
Oh.
But in that 2 years, she did everything she wanted to do. She was able to do it financially, took cruises, did everything. And so I'm very proud of that, because
And rightfully so.
I represent some of those employers and say, look, there's a person who's been out for so long, who's probably on her last leg, but still has what it has, you know.
Can
what
you
it
clone
takes.
yourself and just send yourself to different companies, please? Thank you for sharing
I
that.
mean, it really happened. And
It
someone-
does.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we have so many stories. I mean, there's so many of them, but I want to continue. How you say what you say is more important than what you say. And what you just shared is an indication of that. When you're thinking about who you are and describing who you are, please look at it from the hiring side and talk about telling the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and who you are and why you're so good at your job and why you're so happy to be interviewing that day. They don't want to hear your life story. They don't want to know where you moved. They want to hear why you're so good and productive and save time and very effective. Now, here's 2 slides. One person gave an elevator pitch who's an accountant, and she introduced herself as having 10 years of experience in the insurance industry as an accountant, looking for opportunities in Dallas. That would take maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Then she would want to talk about her USP, her unique selling proposition, which is a sales pitch. She is not going to do well because she's not engaging. It's important to engage and connect. As opposed to someone in HR with 10 years experience working in consumer product companies using benefit-focused terminology. Benefit-focused. Because we're all commodities. We're competing with other people to get a job because we are supposedly good at what we do. So this person said that I'm an HR professional with a strong track record helping people identify and recruit top-level talent into management. Action words, action verbs. And it didn't take 20 seconds. It didn't take 10. And please don't say you think outside the box. Are you a multitasker? Do you know how to use the internet? Come on. You know you're laughing, but people still talk that way. And I forget who mentioned it. You did. Read your pitch out loud. Record yourself. Say it to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband or your wife, or when you're on the subway. You'll get a seat very quickly. The more you practice, the better you will get. Confidence, something they don't teach in school. Now, there are questions in the interviewing process that lead up to getting offers. Like, what are your short-term goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years? I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. You're asking me what I'm doing in 5 years. Do you work well under pressure?
No.
You're hired. Now, when you're on interviews, a good interviewer will thank you for taking the time to answer their questions, and they will ask you if you have any questions. Does anyone have any questions that you have asked interviewers or hiring managers? Yes, next, thank you. Mr. Recession, please. Yes?
Why do they like working for the company?
That's a good one. Another one is, when you accepted your current job, did it turn into what you thought it would be?
Gary,
Yes, sir.
what's the culture of the company?
Please don't ask that. Go on Glassdoor and see what's written about the company. Most people ask that. You want, what's your goal? You want to be remembered.
But I'm asking you a sincere question, how do people work together in your department? I can read a brochure, but what's really happening? I'm asking what's really happening for your company to determine if I'm going to fit in your company.
Well, another way to ask that question could be, if you don't mind, would you explain what your management style is? People that report to you, how do you work with them? that will give you the same answer, and you'll be more impressive than someone who asks about the company culture. Because you can usually find company culture online, Glassdoor and other websites, so please, you want to be different, you don't want to ask the same questions. Okay?
Just screen. Oh, no, 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 no.
I think everyone else, you know, how about how long is it before I get a raise and a promotion? Right. Look at it from the hiring side. Yes, sorry.
I really enjoy having a conversation with them and at the end asking things about what keeps them up late at night, like what's really challenging for them.
Thank
You know,
you.
to what extent do they see this role fitting into the organization to be able to help solve this challenge? Why now? What, you know, and I really try to sit with it and sort of become the consultant and think through and problem solve.
That's a great approach.
Both have to tend
It
to
is.
share and open up in ways that, you know,
Yes.
are not always so obvious.
And please don't say, if I get the job, what am I gonna do? Oh, if you give it to me, no, because they're gonna think, oh, this person's desperate. Yes.
And tell me about a recent hire and how has this person succeeded in this present, in a present role?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I think just even sometimes going to the news feed and seeing what's happening for them and using that as a talking point. So for instance, I see that you recently made an announcement that you're going to open 3 more offices. How would that impact this role?
Oh, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Because I have hiring managers that will start off interviews by asking, how much do you know about our company? Most people don't look into researching a company. They practice their elevator pitch, they look at the job description, they read their resume, I'm ready, no you're not. Look at the person's background on LinkedIn, see where they used to work.
You have to come with them.
Find something in common.
Yes, sir.
No, just
Sir.
time around just talking about that. I'm currently interviewing with 2 different companies. I have one offer and I'm pending on another one.
Good for you.
This next week. But one thing I found was exactly what you said. The conversation where I was the most natural, it was a job that I didn't think I was gonna get. That's the one that I have an offer for. And the one that I was very gung-ho about, that I did all my research, I found out everything they had in their company, all the products they offer. I mean, I was pitching the guy on the job before he even told me about it. That's how much research I had done, and I'm not getting an offer, so I think it's
I
great
can't
what
thank
you're
you
doing.
enough for
Yeah.
sharing that. He just said the one he didn't really think he was really interested in or tried too much, he didn't sell, he's getting the offer. Because recruiters and managers wonder, why is this person so anxious? And then you send a follow-up email. Look forward to hearing from you.
Another thing that I find helpful, YouTube could be your best friend. You want to see a mock interview?
Yes.
You want to see questions, what they asked during the
Brilliant.
interview?
Brilliant.
Google that.
You're right.
And you
You're
see,
right.
I lay on my bed, I stopped watching my TV now. Google's my life. And by the way, I used to work for Morgan for 15 years, best company.
Where?
But I used to work for Morgan. I just took a package with them.
Okay.
Best company, bar none,
Good.
with the return from,
Good for you.
you know,
Good for you.
workers coming
Yes.
back, people who have been out of the market for, mothers, people who took time to take care of their children.
Right.
People, so when you go in there and you're asking these questions, they're eliminating you, because they say,
Right.
I don't want you, I could just imagine the water cooler talks you're gonna be doing, they're really looking for that fit. So
Right.
everything you want now is on Google, is on YouTube. You want to find out how to ask these
You're right.
questions, interview questions for Morgan Stanley, interview question for, I interviewed the other day with Blackstone. And, being in Morgan for so long, I know I just don't want that rigid, culture. I know what I want now. So I'm kind of looking, not easy, but after you've been seasoned with companies like Morgan, JP Morgan,
Right.
and Lehman, you have an understanding of what you want now on the outside. So you have to go out and be a detective, go on Google, go everywhere,
Smart.
and you
You're right.
gotta take it.
And I also, just to add something, I think it's just as important to know what you don't want,
Yeah.
because it'll save time. How do you get an offer? Most managers overestimate their gut feelings about people. They overestimate them, which means, gee, I don't think this person's going to work out. That's my gut feeling. Or the opposite. I think this would be a good fit. Let's talk about how you can reinforce your value proposition. Sure. Yeah, as a technical recruiter, I have companies that won't even interview you until you pass an online test, or 2, or 3. And then they won't bring you in. You'll have a phone interview. And that's when they see that you have the personality of a paperclip.
Yeah.
And after when people interviewing you, you got like 6 people.
Yeah, I mean, there are behavioral questions, like, give me an example of a time when you went to work and you knew what your day looked like, and every hour you had a meeting and you knew what your tasks were, and all of a sudden an emergency happened. Someone didn't show up, the budget was full. What did you do? How did you react? And most people go, can you give me a minute? Preparation. It's self-awareness and knowing who you are.
I think one of the things our presentation is stressing that maybe sometimes doesn't get thought about enough is that there's like a dual piece. One is preparing ourselves
Right.
as a person going in for an interview. The other is doing the research on the other end of the side. And then the same relationship exists, it's meant to be a conversation.
Yes.
And so I think once it starts feeling like we're being asked the questions and it's not a dialogue, something doesn't feel right. So you can probably know that when we walk out.
Good point, good point. And there's nothing wrong with you saying something like, I'm sure you're interviewing a lot of candidates for this job. It's a great job. Most people don't, they're too afraid to say that. And that's why I was looking forward to meeting you, because I think I'm one of the top candidates. I don't know who you're interviewing.
Then I'm in the top.
You're the top. You got 2 offers.
No, I'm saying.
Okay. Has anyone ever been told you're overqualified? How do you respond?
I said that you have the benefit of getting all my years of experience.
I like that. Anyone else?
I actually have that situation right now with the offer that I'm being made.
The one you want or the one you?
The one that they're giving me that I wasn't too sure about, but that's what I want now.
Okay.
Is they told me that I seem too overqualified because of the years that I have working within finance. I'm a stockbroker.
Right.
But I told them, well, I'm looking for an opportunity where I can learn the other side of the business, and I explained to them what part of the business I've been in before and what compelled me to this position. You know, the benefit that I think, and also I told them, well, all my background, I think it fits in the position very well, because my past background is gonna provide the support that you guys need, but at the same time, it's gonna allow me to learn the other side of the business. So they seem to like it.
Well, that's good. Can I add something to that?
Sure.
If and when the time is right, and you feel there might be still a bit of a disconnect there, why couldn't you say, and there's a lot of opportunities like this out there. I'm gonna land one, and I just hope it's with you.
That's excellent, that's great, that's powerful.
And smile. Okay, salary. So since it's illegal to ask you what your current salary is, what we do on the hiring side is we ask this question: what are your salary requirements?
Right.
Right? So typically, how do you think? What's your answer?
Ballpark figure?
This isn't a ball game.
So if you say anything above 60s, above 80s, that doesn't work?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, when I interview candidates, they turn it around on me. I hate people that answer questions with questions. So when I say, what are your salary requirements? They say, well, what's your budget? You're out.
You're out.
The safest way to answer that, I think, is to know what you are worth. Go on Glassdoor and do a search for your job title with the years of experience that you have, and you will get a range. And then you can volunteer what you were earning in your last job. Say, look, I was earning 80, I'm looking at opportunity, you didn't ask me, I'm volunteering. I'm transparent, I'm looking at opportunities between 80 and 110, I'm flexible. The job is more important than the salary. The team is much more important than the salary. I want to land in the right culture. And yes, ma'am.
The other thing to consider is to find out how much your boss's salary is.
Ooh.
Oh, right,
The
ask them how
reason-
much they're earning.
No, you don't ask them that, I'm saying to find out. So if I'm applying to the VP of HR,
Right,
and I've gone on Glassdoor and I've done my research,
okay,
and I've seen that VP is earning about 160, 170,
right,
and I'm trying to ask for 120, that's what I'm saying.
okay,
Benchmarking it that way.
That's
It's
a good
another
idea.
way of looking at it.
that's a good
They
idea.
don't want, your boss could be earning about a third, you should be earning about a third of what, but that's just another way to look at it, because you
That's-
can look at all the market data,
True.
but the important thing is, the person who you're reporting to, if you're asking for something that's so close,
Right, because the risk is you might be after his or her job in the future.
But how do you avoid leaving money on the table? That you come in so low, that maybe they wanted to pay $100 an hour, and you say, well, I'll take 50 out of that rate.
And people do, people do.
Will go
They
to
do.
50,
They do.
and then just take. So it's such a, you find yourself in such a dilemma, because you're trying to find out that you're not leaving money on the table. So how do you go about doing that? Because I understand what the Glassdoor and everybody else salary will say the range, but now there's so many game playing.
Right. Know what you're worth. Look at job postings that are similar and look at the salaries, and you will know it. Yes?
Is it okay to say that you accept a salary according to your experience and what the role of the
I like that first half of that. Why don't you say you're looking for a salary that's, it's your fair market value for what you're worth? Your years of experience and your accomplishments. I think that's good, yes.
Would we be naive to think that they would lowball us?
Of course they would.
Yes.
They will
do.
blow you.
No,
They'll blow you all the time.
I mean, you're gonna walk as soon as something better comes along.
Not necessarily.
I can get you
Exactly.
cheaper, I will hire you.
And people, yes, that's what happens.
May I ask you a follow-up? The
Of course.
present situation for me,
Yes.
because the difference between the two jobs why I'm having accepted the one is because it's not much. It's like $10,000. I mean, you consider after tax or what have you,
Right.
it's really no real money.
Right.
But I'm saying that's my difference. So how do I negotiate this? Because they presented me with an opportunity. They told me what the salary was. I never had a conversation about what I was willing to accept. They just say
They just told you what the salary was.
Right.
So what my initial reaction would be, if you accept the offer, before you accept it officially, ask them, say you've been thinking about your future at the company.
Sure.
And if you exceed your expectations in performance, would you be able to receive a salary review after 6 months or a year? What's their policy?
Oh, that was my question. Yeah, excellent. Beautiful.
And if they say after a year, you know where you stand.
Okay. Fair enough.
But if they hear you say exceed expectations, it will help you.
That's the key word there. See the expectation.
Yes, most people don't use those words on interviews. Yes,
So you used to have a sign-on bonus too, like.
nothing is
something
guaranteed.
someone did.
Nothing
Yeah.
is guaranteed. Sign-on bonuses happen, but they're not guaranteed. It's like that's when comp comes up. You can say you were at Morgan Stanley for 15 years and your total comp was 200, but your base was 90. 90 is what matters, not the 200. Because it depends on the performance of the company stock and also your performance. Yes?
I'm sorry, no, I came
That's
over
okay.
late. Is there anything you could share, if you haven't already, about some of the single biggest mistakes or faux pas you've seen people make? I know you mentioned people talking too much during the interview. What are a few things that you're just like, oh boy, I wish we could have just.
That's a great question. The first reaction that I have as an answer is being a good listener and not interrupting. Because when I interview people, I get, I mean, we're in New York, everybody interrupts everybody. That's number one. Number two is just having confidence and not being perceived as being desperate, and knowing what you're good at and knowing yourself. And not, again, don't come off as being desperate, because that's the worst thing you could possibly do. And asking good questions. Yes, sir.
One question that we touched upon before was about having gaps in your resume.
Right.
What do you think are some of the best ways to explain like gaps? Like besides, since we're gonna frame the truth, besides
Yeah.
besides like, oh, you know, I'm gonna travel and I want to do some volunteer work and I want to end, you know, and I wanted to take a step back and see if I wanted to continue in this field. You know, like, what are things that you've heard that you're like, don't say that, and other things that you've heard like, okay, that was good, right?
Well, I think I would rather respond with a positive. If there are gaps, you've got to have a credible, very credible reason for the gap. And one of the most credible reasons that I have heard is I did a reboot in my career. My last two positions were mismatches. That happens. You go on an interview, receive an offer, you're on the job for 3 months, and it turns out to be different than what you were told. It happens all the time. In fact, a lot of people were hired, and then a month into the job, they say, we don't want you to do this, we want to put you on this project. And you don't want that project, you don't want that job, but you have to do it. So what do? You wait until you can find another one, or you leave. So that's a very credible answer. It was a mismatch, it didn't turn into what I thought it would be. I didn't feel it was the right thing to do to keep getting a paycheck and stay there while I was confused about what I wanted to do. And now I know. That's what gets offers. Knowing who you are. Yes, ma'am.
I did something that when you were pushing me to, when I had that situation where I was let go and I was very apprehensive, I did have someone I know whose company called all of my previous jobs and said, I'm considering hiring a consultant, can you confirm this? So the first job was like, who, what? Because they'd gone through so many changes that they were just like, yeah, we can just confirm this, and that was done. And then the second one, I guess, which is a financial firm, now they have that thing where you have to sign on and pay money, and you're just like, well, we're not doing that. But the third one that I was worried about, after I think I told this, I'd actually secured the letter saying that, you know, the recommendation from the head of HR.
Yes.
He actually apparently answered, like, yeah, she worked here or whatever, I'm really stressed right now, we let all these people go, and he was just so stressed out that when you tried to ask him just to see what he would say, like, why is she not there, he's like, well, I can't discuss that right now, this is whatever. So that kind of put my mind at ease, because he told me to go do that, and I did, and so I don't actually have to worry about what
Good.
I'm gonna say.
Good.
I know what I'm gonna say now.
That's good. Also, to your point, TMI, it's a killer, as you know. Yes, sir.
You know, what about age?
What are you looking at me for?
Men's health.
Yeah, well, hey, ageism exists. When you're being interviewed, when you're in your 50s and you're being interviewed by someone in their 20s and 30s, your ability to connect is crucial. And there are so many things that are in play, like, is this person better than me? Is my manager gonna think this new hire is gonna get my job? That all comes into play. But my advice is to worry about things that you can control. You cannot control ageism. You can't. However, your behavior is an indicator. Age is a state of mind. I know people in their 30s, they act like they're going to the retirement home. I'm not kidding. What are you doing? I'm going home watching TV, I'm going to binge watch, you know, The Sopranos. It was on 40 years ago. Your ability to connect. And when someone asks you a question, don't, well, let me think about it. Can I get back to you on that? Quick. You can't control ageism. Yes, sir.
From the hiring perspective, from that standpoint, what is the concern with like hiring someone that's overqualified? Like what's that so someone's overqualified, what's that concern?
Many concerns. Right, you'll get bored and you'll leave, the major one. You will intimidate everyone on the team because you have more experience than all of them do. You might threaten the senior manager because you have more years and more experience.
And there's a financial aspect.
I was just gonna say that, thank you, yeah.
That's what you're taking.
No, but it's the cost of cost of hire is somewhere between, could be somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000.
Plus the time
Yep.
that the team is missing someone.
Right. Well, I mean, if they don't, if you're overqualified so that you're not getting the interview because they're like, oh, this guy's overqualified or whatever.
Right.
If they interview you though, if you get the interview, they take that into account, no?
If you do get the interview, they're gonna wanna see how you defend your overqualifications, right? You're in HR. How you can defend it? Gee, you know, it seems like you're overqualified. Your answer determines whether you continue or you don't.
Right.
Yeah, I knew that. I just wanted one more year and then want to retire. Don't laugh, my first.
So we have like 2 more minutes.
No, we don't. No.
I know, there's a new speaker
Okay,
for next
okay.
program, so like 2 more minutes.
I'm sorry, no, I wanted to get your question, sir. I think so. Yes. Yes, Steve. Yes.
My question is this, in terms of reframing, what about a position where, I'll use my example.
Okay.
I wanted to change my profession, so I went and do some volunteer work with the credentials that I had as a
Okay.
phlebotomist.
Okay.
Now that I want to apply to become a phlebotomist,
Wow.
they're saying they're
Yeah.
not going to acknowledge the volunteer work that I did.
They're not going to acknowledge the volunteer
No,
work that you did because...
They want paid employment as a phlebotomist. So the 4 years work that I did.
I'm going to turn it over to this young lady.
volunteerism.
I would like you her to answer that, and I have my own answer. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so that's an excellent question. I encourage everyone in the room to ask the person or organization that you volunteer for to simply write a letter of recommendation. To whom it may concern, as the employment specialist, I've had the opportunity to work with Ms. Such and Such, who has volunteered for such and such years. During her time here, she assisted dozens of participants in finding a job, blah, blah, blah. I understand when someone says, well, you know, was it paid or whatever we want to hear, but getting your letter of recommendation on the recent, on the letterhead of the company, outlining what you did on a daily basis and backing it up, like I did, is not just I volunteered, it's here are the people I volunteered with and this is what they're saying about my work.
I like that answer. I'd like to add one more point, if I can.
Please.
You're doing the job as a volunteer that they need, correct?
Exactly.
Whether you know the job and you're getting paid, or you know the job and you're not getting paid, you know how to do it. And I would push back on them and say, if this is a reason that you're not going to extend an offer or continue the conversation, to be honest with you, I'm not sure I even want to work in this culture.
Pardon. 4 years. 4 years.
Wow.
4 years of volunteer.
I wouldn't let them get, I mean, maybe I'm a little abrupt, but I wouldn't let them get away with it. Or you know what, just to soften it, say, you know, there are many other opportunities out there that recognize those skills, so thank you for your time. Don't let the door kick you in the back.
Do you go there alone?
Okay, I think we're done.
Thank you.